What if you could deliver an ad to someone the moment they walk past your competitor's door? That's the power of geofencing marketing. And in this episode, we're breaking down 5 of the best campaigns ever to do it. From boosting foot traffic overnight to turning location data into loyal customers. We'll uncover how they used precision targeting, timing, and creative messaging to drive results. You'll learn 1. What made each campaign work. 2. How you can apply the same strategies to your own local marketing. And 3, why location-based advertising remains one of the most effective small business marketing tools today. Whether you're new to digital marketing or looking to level up your local reach, this episode will show you how to turn proximity into profit and bring more customers through your doors. Matt Hansen.
What's going on, Jim?
I'm Jim Diedlow. You're listening to the Mastering Local Marketing Podcast, episode 83. Matt's a digital marketing professor, and I'm not sure if it was in a class or after a class that I took his classes at Purdue Northwest, where he's a professor, and got my MBA with a emphasis in marketing. I remember after one of the classes, now I think about it, Matt Hansen's talking to me and a couple other students, and he's like so excited about this new thing where you could drive by in your car or walk by a business and they could know that you're there, and then they could target you with an ad, whether from that business or, better yet, this is how his mind works, how a competitor could target you as you walk in front or drive in front of that competitor's business. All I could think about was privacy concerns and my own phone and that kind of stuff. But the first day he heard about it was years ago, was excited about it, and is just as excited about geofencing right now.
It's because I hear people asking me about it constantly, right? So it, for some reason, it goes into people's heads, and they all have to ask me about it. So I just flew back from Atlanta, Georgia, and we were having some conversations down there, and I was talking to some other people in some other universities. We had visited Georgia Tech and kind of their AI manufacturing facility and all this other stuff. But geofencing is still a buzzword that everyone is asking me about. And a couple of people were saying, well, how does it work and all these other things? And to put it into perspective, you and I are sitting in a chair at this point, and if I wanted to, I could literally drop an ad right on top of the chair that you're sitting in, and anyone that sits in that chair over the next whatever amount of days that I'm targeting will start to see my ads going forward, right? So that's really what geofencing is. We draw this imaginary little line around a certain location, and think of going into Google Maps and drawing lines around a building or even an office, which I've actually done in the past. I've literally dropped an ad on top of an office where I knew somebody I wanted to see my ad sits every day, right? So you can get very specific on it, right? So if Jim's sitting in his home tomorrow, I could literally target just Jim for the next 365 days, and you're going to go, why am I seeing so many of your ads? There's a reason. But today I wanted to kind of talk about some of the really fun geofencing type things that you can do with some examples. And like I said, it's nothing more than taking, on the most simplistic way of looking at it, a Google map, right? And just drawing a line around a building or around a little area. And that's what we can do. We can target individuals that walk into there. Or, as you'll hear, we can do some really fun things with timing.
So this podcast, if you're listening to us, you know that it is mostly for the small and medium-sized business, maybe a marketing department picks up some stuff. I've noticed that also. But my first inclination, other than the fact that we're associated with you, is that this is too expensive and would require too much technological expertise. Are either of those true?
No, neither one of them are true at this point. I mean, yes, you can talk about programmatic and social targeting based on drawing different, areas on a map. We can also talk about mobile apps, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's too expensive." A mobile app is very simple today. I mean, you can probably get the designers of mobile apps at this point are using so much AI that the cost is drastically dropped. So, I mean, you can go out there and get a $2,000 app put together, no problem.
That used to cost 80 grand.
Used to cost
I
80
remember
grand.
I got an 80
Yeah.
grand quote on doing a special app I wanted like 5 years ago, and I'm like, is it really 80 grand?
Yeah.
Well, it was. It was an expertise. AI can actually write that app for you.
Yeah. Today, I mean, the developers that you talk with will tell you, I can't charge you 80 grand anymore because 80% of the app is being written by AI, and we just go in and clean it up. So the prices have drastically come down. So today we'll talk a little bit about apps, but we'll also talk about the programmatic side and social, and how just something that you already have access to from an advertising platform, you can literally just turn it on.
So it's not that expensive. It doesn't take that much technological expertise. One thing you might want to have a little bit of familiarity with is the 3x3 grid that you went through in your classes and still do. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so what I always tell people is you can literally go down to like a 3 foot by 3 foot grid anywhere you want to be. So when you look down at the tiles that are in your kitchen or in your office or wherever, each one of those are typically a foot wide, right? So count 3 across and 3 forward, and that's literally how we can get that small into what we're doing. That's what I'm familiar with. We may be able to go farther than that at this point, but really understanding that you can target any single location you want very simply. So do you want to target your existing customers? Do you want to, are there certain businesses that you want to target? Are there competitors that you want to go after? And I love doing that. You'll hear one story about how I targeted a certain type of company and how I did it today. So, there are all these different ways to use it, but it's really just how creative can you get? And, are you willing to take the steps to do it?
Let's talk some ways some people use this. The Hijack Shoe app.
I've been telling this story for years. So this was probably, 15 years ago, and this was a mobile app. And basically what they did is it's a shoe company, right? A retail shoe store that had a mobile app. And when you walked into a Nike or an Adidas store, or a Foot Locker or anything like that, it would trigger a countdown to those that had the app, right? And it was like, if I walk into Foot Locker, it may notify me. It'll pop up on my screen, and it starts at 100, and it counts down in seconds. And by the time you get back to their store, whatever seconds are left on the timer is what percentage off you got in their store. So think of this. I walk into Foot Locker. I'm on the other side of what we used to call malls, right? And literally it triggers and said, okay, you have 100% off, and the countdown is started, right? So people were literally running across the mall to get back. And as they crossed the front of the store, it would trigger and it would say, 27% or 27 seconds left. That's what they got, was 27% off their purchase from that. So what they were doing is they were geofencing their competitors. And once they walked across that line, it triggered the app and it would send people running back to their store. I loved it. I thought it was a unique way of doing it. Yes, you're giving discounts, but I mean, how fun is that, right? You just see people running through the mall. You have no idea what's going on, but that's how you create real loyalty for your existing customers.
Too bad we don't go to malls as much anymore. But hey, Burger King and McDonald's, that used to be the main competition amongst fast food. Right. Certainly, there's some fast casual. Namely, right around here, right up the street here is Portillo's. Right up the street is Chick-fil-A. I mean, they're all right up Indianapolis Boulevard. Here we are in Hammond, Indiana. But Burger King and McDonald's went at it at one point. Right. And who won?
I don't know if anyone won, to be honest, but in Burger King always utilized a lot of technology. And a while back, they launched a social campaign to try and get people to download their mobile app, right? Because, I mean, any of these fast food companies now, they want you to download the app. It gets you to come in more often.
And you get to put your favorite meal in there, and you just click it, and it's like, all right, I just clicked it. I'll be over there in 3 minutes, and boom.
Right. So what Burger King did was they launched this social campaign to download their mobile app, but what they told you was, we are going to be offering you 1 cent. I believe it was Whoppers back in the day. But it was triggered when somebody would walk through a McDonald's. It would trigger that you could get a 1 cent Whopper, and it was driving traffic back, right? And you're sitting there and you're probably saying, well, that, they're already at McDonald's. Why wouldn't they just buy from there? Yeah, that is true. But you're getting that 1 cent Whopper to come back out of Burger King, and it's really not that hard. I mean, typically McDonald's, Burger King are very close to each other. But this idea, everyone always criticizes everything, right? But this idea actually increased their mobile app downloads by 1.5 million, right? So a simple campaign using geofencing over all of the McDonald's was actually driving downloads of their mobile app, which is the main goal of what they were looking for. They don't care about the 1 cent Whopper, right? That's a temporary loss that they're going to have. But in the long run, now they have the app on their phone. Now they're more inclined to keep it and order from it and things like that. So in reality, what they're doing is they're dropping this geofence. They're buying new customers. They're buying the ability to get people to download their app, which is going to lead to more of a long-term revenue model. And I don't know. I always thought that one was really interesting.
Greek's Pizzeria.
So this one's a different take. We've all ordered pizza. We ordered pizza, I think, 2 weeks ago. And this kind of is what's happening. So they identified the customers that were local to them, right? So competing for the same customers. I mean, nobody drives an hour for pizza. It's relatively close. So what they did is they dropped geofencing on top of all of their competitors, but they put it on a long-term trigger. So instead of getting a notification or seeing ads for the pizzeria right then and there, they delayed it by 2 weeks. So you walked in, and then 2 weeks later, you start seeing the ads again. Because most people, unless you're a college student, don't have pizza every night, right? So you get pizza today. In 2 weeks, maybe you start to think, all right, let's get another pizza. That's what happened. So they triggered the ads to start populating 2 weeks later once people started to think about getting pizza again, because we don't buy pizza every weekend, right? I mean, I get it that it's football season, but still, like, most people don't get pizza every weekend. So the idea was just, let's delay the ads, wait 2 weeks, and then trigger it. And it's funny because the success of this campaign, and it works, right? People start to order and they saw a drastic uptick, but it's that delayed advertising that continues to work beyond just a 2 week, right? So like if we walk in today, 2 weeks later, you and I are going to see the ad. But if somebody walks in next weekend, it's 2 weeks after that. So it's continually pushing out those ads farther and farther and farther, but it's still using the same campaign, the same geofence.
What kind of information people went, somewhere else to get a pizza? What kind of information is Greek's Pizzeria able to glean from that person who went there?
Yeah, basically it pulls from the device that you are, that you're walking through that geofence, right? So it knows, it identifies that individual, I guess we'll call it computer, and will trigger based off of that. So, a lot of people get really weirded out with geofencing. They think like, they know it's me. They know all these details about it. That's not the case. I mean, Apple and Samsung and all of them, we have what's called, like a mobile ID on our phones, but it's anonymous. Nobody knows who you are. They just know that it's tied to that phone. So like nobody's going to know that, as I I take my phone with me everywhere and I walk through a geofence, nobody's going to know it's, Matt Hansen, I live at this, and, all this other stuff. It's anonymous, but it knows that the device itself has triggered that geofence, so it will serve to that device. So a lot of people get really weirded out. They're like, oh, I feel like it, Big Brother's watching over me. It's watching over your phone, your computer, those types of things. It's not watching over you. So just keep that in mind. It sounds a little creepy, and I always have to tell everyone, like, I know from a marketer I sound creepy, but I don't know, what time you went to bed last night.
It was the very first time you knew of geofencing or really kind of saw exactly how localized it could get. It was a little bit creepy how excited you were. I mean, I'm not creeped out that you're going to know, that I keep looking for Land's End jeans and Thursday boots. And those guys are amazing. As soon as I look for Land's End, I can just count on it, seeing it for 2 weeks. Same thing with Thursday boots. Or,
They're retargeting you.
They're retargeting, and they're a competitor of Red Wing. And I went into Red Wing yesterday. I was getting a haircut next door, and I walked in. Now I'm getting hit even harder with Land's End because they knew I was at Red Wings.
They could.
Yeah. Hey, Navy Credit Union. You see them a lot on television and radio and on your Facebook feed and that kind of stuff, but they got pretty good at geofencing.
Yeah, so they've used a company that I've actually partnered with in the past for some campaigns where they do it's Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash cars, and they wrap the cars. So they'll do like the whole car. They'll do just like the doors. They have different levels that you can do. But the cool part is, right, like everything is tied back to digital, so you can track everything every place they're driving. You can actually tell them, hey, at this time from 1 to 3, I want you to be in this location. So again, we're in football season. The Bears game, I believe, is at noon this Sunday, right? So, at noon, I could say, I want you guys driving around Soldier Field from, let's say, 10 to noon, and they will do that, and those cars will drive around with your ad on the side of the car. And you're like, okay, that's not really great. But they have the ability with a computerized system in the car to actually read your phone, and then we can actually then start to target you after the fact. So we know we drove by you. It triggers that I hit your phone. Your phone can then be targeted from here on out, however long I want it to run. But Navy Credit Union actually did this, and they had 57,000 plus cars that they drove, or people that they drove by, right? Not cars, people. And in doing that, they actually traced it back to, it was like a 1.7% of those 57,000 people actually went to their website. So think about that. Like you wrap a car, you're driving the car past an audience. The audience may or may not have seen you, but now we have the ID of your phone, which then triggers ads in a digital space, in that just by doing that and showing those ads to you, we've already triggered a 1.7 and some change % traffic back to our website. So it's taking the real world and it's taking the digital world and it's meshing it all into one. Now, I don't know about you, but a programmatic ad typically has like a 0.5% or maybe even less, like a 0.1% click-through rate. We're talking 1.7% on this campaign, which is social media advertising click-through rates. And this is a physical car driving around using the data that it's getting from your phone. It's pretty cool. I don't know. I love that one.
Actually, in one of the previous episodes, we talked about click-through rate on emails. I had no idea that it was so much higher than.
It's huge.
We go back. I don't even know what number that was, but you'll get those numbers. Finally, since my wife is a lawyer and a number of them are involved in, her associates are involved in criminal law and in PI, injuries and that kind of stuff. They have found some creative ways to advertise, and one of them is geofencing. Mm-hmm. Specifically, if you were a criminal lawyer, how would you use this?
So one of my dear friends is a lawyer, and I had to bring in one of my own into this because I'm going to say I'm good at this, right? Sorry, I'm going to pat myself on the back for this
You
one.
don't have to say it.
No,
Everybody
I'm
listening
gonna say it for
knows.
this one,
Yes.
right? Like, so we sat down one day, and he was asking me, he's like, "All right, let's do some marketing. I haven't done any in the past." And I said, "Well, who are we targeting?" And he started talking about DUIs and all the OWI, all this stuff. And
DUIs are the easiest money, by
yeah,
the way.
yeah, it's rinse and repeat. So I said, "Well, we can't target you know police on the road or anything like that. We can't like you can blanket the entire area, but you're hitting a bunch of people that just doesn't make sense." So we started having this conversation. I said, "Well, what about the court system?" And he goes, "Well, the courts, you can't take your phone in, and at that point they're already so deep into it that it doesn't really make sense." And I said, "Okay, well, if you get arrested for driving under the influence, you're going to jail, right? Like, there's no doubt about it, you're going to jail. So why don't we target the jails and the police, the different police municipalities?" And he's like, "Oh, that would be interesting." I said, "All right, well, let's give me a list of who you want to target, and we'll literally just drop it right on top." So what we did is we dropped we went on the map and we drew a nice little geofence around every single police station. And we said, well, we don't want people that have visited this police station more than, I think we said 3 times, because that would be your police officers, your maintenance workers, those types of things, your FedEx, your UPS drivers, all that. We want people that have gone in there once, maybe twice, and that's who we want to target. So we dropped it on top, and we ran an ad just for OWI, DUI. There's two different ways to say it, but and within a week, I think we spent maybe $50. Within a week, we had $8,000 in new revenue come in, and he just kind of went, "That was crazy." And I said, "Yeah, this is kind of what we do." And and I get this conversation a lot from lawyers. They're just like, "How do I do this?" So if you're a lawyer out there, use this to your advantage. And the first thing that you have to do is just go find a programmatic ad company, and there's tons of them out there. They all kind of like circle back to Trade Desk, but there's a ton of them out there. And all you have to do is give them a call. They'll help you set it up. Typically they're, I would say they're probably looking at about a $2,000 minimum spend, but realize you can spread that out over time. So if you want to do an entire year, if you don't want to spend all that money up front, you can do it over a year, but they will literally teach you the system and how to geofence and all of that. So I mean, as much as I love doing all that for everyone, I'm like, some of these vendors have made it so simple. Just go out there and do it yourself.
He's Matt Hansen. I'm Jim Deedlow. This is episode 83, the best geofencing marketing campaigns ever. Hijack, Burger King, Greek's Pizza, Navy Credit Union, and his friend, the lawyer. So any final comments?
No, all I would say is don't run away from new technology. Don't be afraid of it. Again, you're not stealing anyone's social security numbers by doing geofencing. It's literally you're identifying where your customers are and you're putting the ads right where they need to be instead of just blanketing an entire area.
Until next time, see you later.
So many podcasts.
Episode 84 of Mastering Local Marketing. He's Matt Hansen. I'm Jim Diedlow. You all have a website. Let's say, of course, remember, we're trying to talk to you as a medium or small business. What can you do to master your local marketing? Everybody has a website, so let's talk about this. If your website traffic is growing, but your sales aren't, it's time to look at what happens after the click. Every click counts, but not every visitor converts. In this episode, we explore the key principles behind higher conversion rates and what separates a good website from a great one. We break down what makes customers take action, why small tweaks can create big results, and how you can turn more visitors into loyal buyers. And you'll discover the strategies top marketers use to build trust, simplify user journeys, and guide people toward saying yes. Whether you're focused on local marketing or elevating your overall digital marketing performance, this episode will help you understand what truly drives conversions and how to make your marketing work smarter, especially in terms of your website. Does everybody have a website?
I would hope by now. It's been a while.
Yeah, everybody basically has to have a website.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see some pretty bad ones and some pretty good ones. We're going to talk about some of the good ones today.
Yeah.
You have an 18-year-old neighbor, right?
Yeah. So, a lot of people will say, oh, I can't sell. I can't build like a great website. I can't do any of this stuff. And I always remind them of my neighbor that I had. It was this kid that lived behind me years ago. And I got to know him. Really smart. He was going to IU. I won't hold that against him. But he was going to IU, and he was launching these websites, and they were e-commerce websites, and he had a series of product and things like that. And instead of just launching a website, I got inspired by him. Right. So his name is Jake. Great guy. And I would literally listen to him talk, and he was constantly dissecting websites, constantly trying to understand what will increase the conversion of the products that he was selling and all this other stuff. And it got me thinking, and it got me inspired back when he was doing it, because I was actually working with him just out of fun, right? Because I was learning things from an 18-year-old, and he was learning things from me. And his mom had come over and was saying, can you kind of mentor him? And I said, absolutely. And, we talked for probably about 2 years back and forth as he was kind of building different things and launching new websites and different things. Now, you're sitting here and you're like, okay, yeah, he's an 18-year-old kid and whatever. Yeah, he is. But he didn't know anything coming in. He was researching. He was learning what was working on others. He was connecting with people. And he was basically taking a checklist of what worked. Now, again, he was 18 years old. And I used to text him every morning. And I would ask him, I go like, how are sales today? And he would send me a revenue number every single morning when I'm sitting down having my coffee. Now, mind you, I'm having my coffee at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd text him. And I would get an answer back roughly around 8 o'clock, 8:30, and he'd be like, oh, I'm at 97,000 for the day. And my mouth just started hitting the floor, because he started and it was 6,000, and then it was 20,000, and then it was 60,000. And this kid, he was absorbing every possible thing he could get from everyone that he knew and didn't know. Like, he was literally reaching out to other people to understand what they were doing. And I saw it was so much inspiration to me, because I was just like, man, if this kid is doing this now at 18, what is he going to be doing in the future, right? And it kind of, I started looking at myself like, I feel like I'm being lazy here, right? Like, I need to catch up with him. I mean, I don't have the energy of an 18-year-old anymore, but still, I was just like, okay. So, like, I dove in with him and started working on some projects with him, and it was great. Like, it was a refresher course for me and all this other stuff. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring today, we talk a lot about digital marketing for obvious reasons, but from a website perspective, a lot of people don't really look at their website and start to look at it from an outside point of view, or from what works to trigger people to purchase from you or to call you or whatever it may be. So I wanted to kind of touch on some things today. I mean, there's an exhaustive list of things we can talk about, but we've pulled some things out today that I think, if you start to look at your website and you start to question these things, you're going to get a little bit more clarity, and maybe you'll be on your way to, $97,000 by 8:30 in the morning. Who knows?
Let's do a couple terms first. Once again, small and medium-sized business, or small and or even a medium-sized business marketing department. These apply, but conversion rate is
basically those people that come over to your website that actually purchase something, or if you're just trying to get leads or trying to get contacts, right? Somebody that fills out a form.
Value proposition.
Okay, so this is the number one thing that drives me insane. You go to a website and you look at it, and it's a cookie cutter of everyone else, right? And I ask this, and I've asked your people here even this question is, why are you different? What's the value that you are providing that no one else is providing? Why is it that I should give you money? Right? Like, what is it that you're doing for me? And remember we talked about the story and, having a hero and all of those types of things. So what is it that you can do to solve something for me? What is your value to me? And I think most often when we go to a website, it's me about the company, and it's less about the customer that is coming there looking for a problem to solve. So look at your website and go, what is my biggest value that I'm providing to my customer? And is it, when my website loads, is it plain to see right there? So when we say, having a value proposition above the fold, it's an old term which basically says, do I have to scroll on your website to see it, right? So as you scroll, it would be below the fold. And the fold would be the bottom of the monitor is basically the way to look at it. So when I go to your website, the very first thing should be the value that you are providing to that customer. What is it? Is it you're providing something that nobody else does? Is it you have better customer service? Is it your customers absolutely adore you and you have 10,000 5-star reviews? I mean, what is it that you're providing, and make it blatantly clear right when you get to your website?
So another term, CTA, call to action. You've said your value proposition, and at some point, I don't know if it's going to be above the fold, it might be below or a different page or whatever, but there needs to be a call to action. Mm-hmm. It needs to be very clear. How do you get that across?
Right. So as we said, a call to action is, do you want somebody to order something? You want them to fill out a form, whatever it may be that you're trying to get them to do. So many people will create a call to action on their website, and they'll put it on there once, and it'll be a button, say, some kind of button that says click here or whatever, right? Okay, fine. Does that button that you've created match the colors of everything else on your entire page? Does it get washed away? Right? So if I look at the page, is it really calling out to me that I need to click that button? So if you have, I wear a lot of blues, a lot of purples, a lot of greens. So if I were a website, I'm blue, purple, and green, is there a bright red button, which is your call to action? Because it's the polar opposite, right? If your colors are red, yellow, orange, hot colors, do you have a blue button, a purple button, a green button? Something that literally differentiates, because that's what you want the eyeball to go to. We look at things that are different, right? It's just the natural way that human beings are. We see everything all the same, but then you notice things that are a little bit different. So from a call to action standpoint, we've got to have the difference, but then most companies will put one call to action button or link on their page. When I build a landing page, I'll put 3 or 4 as you go through that, right? So there'll be one at the top. You scroll a little bit, there's another one. Scroll a little bit, there's another one. And at the bottom, there's another one. And the reason being is when that motivation comes to say, oh, well, maybe I do need to buy this. There's a button in plain sight, and I don't have to scroll to go get it.
Remind the small to medium sized person what a landing page is versus,
Sure.
yeah.
Yep. So a landing page is basically so if you're driving traffic back over, let's say you're running a social campaign, you're running programmatic, whatever it may be, a paid search campaign on Google, it's the page that they come to. So typically you wouldn't send them to your homepage. You'd send them to a landing page that has the information that the ad was talking about, right? So I've seen people that will do, there was this big push for red light therapy a while back, and this one company was pushing it to their homepage. And I said, what's the point of doing that? What are we trying to do? And they said, well, we're trying to get appointments. So we literally sent them to a red light therapy page that had the calendar right there of open slots that they could then, reserve right at that point. So make sure your landing page communicates with your ad that you're not just sending them to a homepage and then they're lost. They have no idea where to go.
Testimonials, are they really that big a deal?
Do you buy from Amazon?
I do.
Do you ever look at the testimonials?
All the time.
My wife, I laugh at her because she sends me stuff all the time, and she goes, okay, your job, do the research on the testimonials, right? So like she'll send me things. She's like, tell me if this is good or not. And I'll dive in. Now, mind you, there are some pretty shady companies out there that will put false testimonials out there, but you got to realize that testimonials will provide you with extreme value, right? So, the last episode we were talking about different geofencing, and my lawyer buddy that, we obviously increased revenue significantly from what he was spending. Could I ask him for a testimonial? Sure. Would he give me one? Of course he would, right? He's going to put something out there and say, we spent this, we got this. I would do that all day. So testimonials create trust, and people start to relate to these individuals. So you go to Amazon and you read these testimonials. You don't even know who these people are, but you believe them. So it's something about the human psyche that we believe other people, even though we don't know who they are. We're believing complete strangers, but the testimonial side of it actually triggers that safe, trusting feeling that we need to get people to buy.
Airbnb is specifically, I mean, everybody looks at the testimonials there. Well, in a local area, let's look at Indiana. Here we are, I think, just in this county is 19 overlapping taxing municipalities, and then you go into Porter County, you go to LaPorte County, kind of a 3-county area. Maybe there's 30 different municipalities. If you did a testimonial here in Hammond and it showed to somebody in LaPorte County, it's really not going to matter. But if you're doing it in your community and it's a testimonial from somebody in your community, does that give it more value?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, right? So especially if people start to know who it is. I mean, even better, right? So a lot of small businesses, a lot of people in the United States live in these small towns, right? So you have a small town. I mean, I grew up in Lowell, Indiana, which at that point had, I think, 6,600 people in it. And, you knew pretty much everybody. So if you start to see testimonials on a website from John down the street, or, Mary over on the other side of town that you've, ran into a few times, that's clearly, like, these people, right? So from a small town perspective, it's huge. From a large, think of a Chicago or an LA, New York type of thing, we don't necessarily want to know who those people are. But if there's a lot of testimonials on there, or, we've talked about Google business profiles a lot and having those reviews, that people see that as, oh, this is a legit business. There are a lot of testimonials, a lot of reviews there, so I should probably trust this person.
All right, let's talk some design stuff, and let's kind of run through some of these. How do you everybody says, oh, they want to you want 3 buttons on one page, and you want to tell your story, and then you might want to give some sort of graphic or whatever. I mean, that's a lot of information to try to jam into a page. Yet, you're supposed to try to make it as simple as possible. How do you balance that?
Well, the way that I say it is, if you're putting something on a website, on a page, it must have value, right? So think about writing a paragraph, and you write this paragraph, let's say it's 150 words, and then go back into it and say, all right, out of all of these words that are on there, what can I cut? Is there extra words in there that I can trim out? Is this sentence even adding anything to what I'm trying to say? And you start to cut that down. And it was a process that I actually used to do with my college students when we were doing plans books for competitions and things. They would write this thing and it would be 20 pages long. And I'd say, okay, let's get it down to 10. And they're like, that's impossible. I go, no, it's not. Let's literally go through each sentence and go, does it need all these words? Is it adding any value to this? Or is it just fluff? Are we just adding fluff in there, right? So people don't want to read anymore. So cut it down, cut it down, cut it down. The other thing to realize is that the human mind goes from largest to smallest, right? So if there's a graphic, text, whatever it may be, our eyeballs will go from the largest thing to the smallest thing. And I can actually show you graphics on it. It's funny because you start to look through it and it'll say, you look at this first, then you go here, then you'll read this, and you might come back to this and read it later. And it's just literally going in size. But that's what we do. So when you're building your website or your landing page, you look at it and you say, okay, these elements that I'm putting on there, are they providing value? Is there one thing I want them to look at more than others? We obviously just talked about call to actions and making sure that it's kind of a different color or whatever it may be to kind of call it out. But ask yourself, what's the most important thing I want them to look at first, then second, then third, and increase the size or decrease the size of that, and that'll be interesting as well. And then lastly, when you're creating graphics for a website, make sure that you shrink them as much as you possibly can in size, because loading time actually does matter, right? So if you put text on a page, that goes into the code itself, right? So that doesn't take any time to render. It's just instantaneous. But when you put images and you put video and all of this stuff, it has to go out there and physically request that to another server and pull it back, and then it has to render on your page or in your browser. So keep it as small as possible in terms of size, file size, not the image or video on the screen, but like file size. And make sure you understand that. So check your loading speeds, make sure they're not, the old days of 20 seconds, but check the size and make sure that you're actually doing it very fast.
You brought up a monitor, and I'm sitting here, got ready for this podcast today, all on my phone, and went to a few websites to look up, remind me about geofencing and some of the website strategies and that kind of stuff. So I never went to any of their monitor-based websites. Should they be designing to the monitor and then say, then it's reformatted to the phone, or should you maybe design toward the phone?
So I was on a website 2 days ago that was not mobile friendly, and I was going nuts because I'm scrolling trying to get to the right side of the page of it. So Google, which we all know is kind of the top tier for search, Google looks for mobile first, right? Because everybody searches on mobile first. So if you are not mobile friendly, if your website is not mobile friendly, you are getting lost instantly. Like, they will penalize you for that reason. So always design mobile first and check it on multiple platforms. So, check it on your phone. If you have an iPhone, go check it on, somebody that has an Android device, check it on different browsers, right? I don't think a lot of people will do that, where different browsers will render differently. So go check Safari and Chrome and Firefox, check every single different type of variable that you can, whether it's a Mac, PC, check everywhere to see how things render. Because if you have one bad experience coming out on one type of browser or whatever it may be, right, that's going to deter people from actually sticking around.
Payments. How do you decide which ones to use?
Well, today it's so easy, right? So back in the day, you kind of had to stick with who was there or the platform that you were on. But now, you can add so many different ways to pay at this point. And, whether it's taking a credit card or it's using PayPal or Apple Pay or what, you name it, right? There's all these different ways. But it was funny, like back when I used to do the e-commerce site for the Nativity line, we added PayPal and our sales went up 15% just by adding PayPal as a payment. Like it blew my mind. I thought, oh, well, let's see what happens. And literally 15% increase in orders just because they could use PayPal. Never saw that coming, right? And that was 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, right? So, where is it today? I mean, people expect multiple ways to pay. My favorite is when you go to do the state of Indiana with your business entities and they don't accept American Express, but I have an American Express card for the business and I can't pay for it. I got to go back to like a debit card because they only take Visa. So again, it's a speed bump, right? I get it, government's different, but like if that was the only thing that you would take as a Visa, then you're missing out on MasterCard, American Express, Discover, all these other ones.
Ultimately, you have this website, and you've taken a lot of this into consideration, and somebody's kind of hanging out, and they're like, well, I don't know. How do you create a sense of urgency to perhaps get them? We talk about the sales funnel, and I'll bring it up again. It applies in a lot of different situations, but you got awareness at the top of the funnel, and then you got consideration in the middle, and then you have conversion when they do it at the bottom of the funnel. How do you create that sense of urgency to take someone from consideration to conversion?
Well, there's multiple ways to do it. You could do it with a countdown clock, right? So the sale ends in 47 hours or even 47 minutes, depending upon what you're doing. But my favorite right now, I absolutely love, is eBay. And eBay, so if you obviously Christmas is coming up, so eBay is a great way to buy actually new products and somewhat cheaper. But like you go in there and there'll be one item, and you'll see in the top left it'll say in 3 carts. So there's one item, but somebody's dropped it into their cart. And you'll notice like there's one item and now there's 3 people that have it in their cart. And you're like, oh, wait. But then you sit there and you start to think like, well, what if they buy it? And then I won't be able to find it, right? So it's created that sense of urgency. Like it's in their cart. If they happen to hit that one extra button before I get back to this later on today, it's going to be gone. I love that. I think they've done a phenomenal job with that. But that's eBay. But you can do very similar things where you have, there are 7 available. You can create, there's different plugins and things that you can put. Maybe 6 people have it in their cart right now. Then, from a small business, you can look at it and go, oh, I need to buy that before it's sold out.
General idea when a small to medium-sized business thinks about their website, what should their attitude be?
Make it simple. Make it focused on your customer. Another thing that I haven't touched on, but one thing that I always start to dissect is your checkout process, right? So I've seen checkout pages that are 4 pages deep and realize that every page you go, you lose more and more and more.
Every piece of information you want from them also.
Right. I was reading an article last night about a company that took out, it was first name, last name, and then the credit card information, but they also had company as a field. When they pulled the company name out of the form, it increased by 15%. Like just one single field by pulling it out, they increased. So me personally, I like to keep it to 1, maybe 2 pages of a checkout because then people don't get tired. Or you create that like you're on step 1 of 3. But if you're not going to use the information for anything, don't collect it. I mean, you need their payment information, you need their address, and you probably need their name. You don't need, birthdays and all this other stuff. I get it that you want it for email marketing and whatever it may be, but ask yourself, what is more important right now? I could probably get that later.
He's Matt Hansen. I'm Jim Deedlow. We're in Hammond, Indiana, and this is episode 84, The Secrets to Higher Website Conversions. Until next time, we'll see you later.